Okay, with these cam bolts done up, I want to put this cover on, but just in here, and you can just see it on camera, we have an O-ring. This is the old one, so I'm going to pull it out. Just grab it, there it is there on my pick. Now look, it's been flattened and look, it's really quite hard, it's not soft anymore. So we're going to replace that. Just going to give it a little wipe over just so there's no oil in there. So what I'm doing is just, I've got a little bit of silicone on my fingers. I'm just kind of rolling it between my fingers. And now that O-ring is kind of sticky. Let's see if we can just stick it in place. It'll kind of sit in the groove anyway, but sometimes they pop out. Okay, so that's the new O-ring in place. Okay, so before we put this cover on, you want to have a look. There are 3 seals that sit in here. Now, again, my kit didn't come with new seals here, I guess, and there are a bit of a specialised seal. They're not just a general O-ring. So I'm just going to leave the ones that are in here. They look to be in good condition. If we have an issue with them later, I'll pull them back out. But definitely want to make sure that those 3 are there. And then we'll just run a nice clean bead of silicone around here. Again, you don't want to be overly generous. I'm probably putting on a bit too much here by the look of it, but I can always take some off if I need to. And I'm just going to give it a bit of a smoosh around. Okay, so again, it's not a huge amount of silicone, it's just a nice neat little bead. Just going to tidy up the edges a bit because I like it to be neat. Just tidy up that inside edge. I probably put a bit too much on, so tidying this up just gets rid of that excess. Nothing's worse than when you make a mess of it on camera, because I've got the world watching. Actually, I've probably only got a couple of die-hard people watching. Done. So we'll let that sit for a few minutes and then we will put this cover on. Okay, now that silicone's gone a little bit tacky, I just want to put a bit of oil on these seals here and just on the inside of this so that nothing binds up when we put it back together. So just get them nice and oily. And also with my oily fingers, I'm just gonna, now it's got a nice sort of chamfer on there just to kind of compress them in as they go, but I just don't want it to go in dry. When you're putting this in, you just want to make sure that we're not wiping off any silicone as we go. It's got a couple of nice little grab points. I'll just get one bolt in here. Now there's 7 bolts that go around here, and they actually have a tightening sequence. Looks something like that. So they wanted you to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So essentially just jumping to opposites. I don't see it as super critical, but we'll follow what they've said. But initially I just want to put these in finger tight. Just remember these loose bolts here are for some bracket that fits back on there. It's hard to see, hard to get to. Can't really show you much on camera. Now just as I was doing these up, I did notice that I've missed a bolt in here, so I don't remember how or where I've missed that. So I hope I haven't missed another one, but we'll tighten that one up when I tighten these up as well. Okay, starting at number 1. I haven't looked up the torque specs on these. Kind of difficult to get in here anyway. But we're just going to do them all up firm, and I'll probably go around then the second time. So that was 1, and then 2, they say jump up over here. I'm just getting a nice little bead of silicone ooze out. There's 2. 3 is this one that's right back in the corner that's hard to get to. Now that they're done up, I'm just going to quickly do a second pass just to make sure that they're nice and firm, and I don't want to have missed any. Okay, that's all those done up now. I can take this away and get rid of it. Next thing is I want to put this exhaust manifold on. Now we cleaned these surfaces up before, so just make sure that they're a good surface. New gasket, of course. Just throw those back on, and line that up, close that up. Now I'm reusing these nuts. You can get new ones. These ones came off fairly easily for me. They weren't too rusted up, so I wasn't too stressed about it. Let's just make sure that thermostat pipe's not caught under the exhaust manifold as we tighten it up. That'll be a problem. So I am going to reuse these. I did soak these in some sort of penetrating fluid just to make sure that they're not too rusty at all. But look, these are running on easy. They're still a serviceable nut. And this last one is a little bit tricky, just down into here. These are in a bit of an awkward spot to torque up. Actually, they're not awkward at all. I'm just being a bit lazy. I'm just going to do these up nice and firm. So I'm just using a deep socket. Now this is actually a little flexible joint, or you can push it right in and it almost acts like a little extension. It's super handy. And that's probably the hardest one of all of them to get. I'll just quickly run through and do these others. I'm just going to come over and just do a final pass by hand just so I can feel how firm they are. Done. Now at this stage I typically would be putting the rocker cover on, but if you remember, it had a heap of gunge in it, and that's sort of emulsified oil. I've cleaned it. I was about to put it back on, but I can still see it's a bit messy inside. So I just want to keep this covered over, just because I don't want to drop anything down in there and cause myself some issues. And as soon as that rocker cover is cleaned up, I'm going to put it back on. But in the meantime, let's get this alternator back in place and this engine mount. Okay, before we can put the alternator back in, we need to get this bracket back in place. Now these bolts were a bit tricky to get to before, but let's see how we go this time. So just going to do them both up finger tight. Just make sure my cabling can kind of come on out. I don't want to get it pinched or anything. Sit it over there. Let's see if we can get these nuts done up here. Now from memory, when we undid this, these were super tight and really difficult. I guess one thing that's a little bit easier here is I still don't have the engine mount in. So this engine's just probably an inch or so higher than where it would normally sit. I think that's got to help. Just finish running these bolts in. Do them up nice and firm because I remember they were tight. Now it is just going into alloy, so don't go super super hard on it, but there we go. Just before I put the alternator back in, this little section in here is where it sits. So it sits down like that and it can pivot on that bolt that sits there. Now when this bolt goes in, it tightens that little collar and pulls it closer. So when you go to push it back in, it's really tight. So what you need to be able to do is just essentially squeeze that back in. Now that sounds easy, but usually they seize up in there, they get all stuck, whatever. So just giving it a little spray, just to see if we can loosen things up. We'll run the bolt back in. And most times you can just give it a nice tap and it will just shift that back. We're not talking hard, but just a good love tap. It really doesn't need to move in much, but we just want to open up that space. This one doesn't look like it's moved for me yet, so let me give it a bit more love. Okay, you can see there now, it's just closed up that gap. You want to be super careful, obviously you don't hit so hard that we crack off any sort of a housing here. But now we can get that bolt back out and it'll be so much easier to put back in. Now with that space in here opened up a little bit, it'll slide on really quite easily over that bracket. And we can get this bolt in quick and easy. We'll loosely put this one in place as well, just so it's sort of all sitting where it's supposed to sit. Just going to run this bottom bolt in. Now remember, this has to kind of pull that little sleeve tight again, so it will take a little bit just to tighten it up. Feels like it there. Okay, that's that. Now we had a couple little brackets that sat in here, so I'm just going to loosely sit them all into position. So I had one that sat on here. Then there was a second bracket that just sat under this aircon hose here. Because I know that I've kind of pushed this aircon hose out of the way a few times, so it's probably not sitting where it was supposed to. Something like that, and that comes back onto there. Something like that. Now we'll tighten all that down in a minute, but for now I'm just going to do it kind of finger tight. Let's see if we can line up the original sort of marks where it sat, so there's no evidence that we were here. So I'm just going to sit that in loosely now, just until I get this engine mount in. So if you remember, the engine mount needed to be kind of wiggled in and wiggled out, but let's see how we go. That's it. So it's got this one big bolt that comes down in here, a nut here, and then a nut that we have to get from underneath. And I can. Now there's 3 bolts, these little stubby ones here, for the front, for the back, and for the up on the side here. Now I believe, from memory, that I dropped one of these bolts and I never was able to find it, so we're going to have to find a replacement. Okay, I had a quick squiz and I couldn't find a suitable bolt, so this isn't going to stop me for today. So I'm just going to put these, the 2 that I've got, in. And then what I do is I usually just write myself a little message, just leave it on the windscreen to remind me that I need to find that bolt. Most likely what will happen is I'll get to the end of everything and I'll move the car, or I'll sweep up underneath it and it'll be underneath the car somewhere. But I'm not going to waste time now looking for it. I'll zip these up. I'll do these ones as well. And I'm going to do the one up from underneath. Now I can just take off my jack that's kind of been supporting that engine. And I'm always much more comfortable once that jack's away and the engine's just sitting there by itself.